More than 400 years and more than 15 million victims. The transatlantic slave trade was one of the darkest periods in human history. Today we observe the International Day for the Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition. We remember not to revisit sadness at the brutality of that period, but to celebrate the determination of our ancestors. We remember to call on their experiences for motivation to conquer any difficulties that come our way. In recognition of today's observation, we come to you from the beautiful Emancipation Park in New Kingston. I'm Theodore Henry. We have lots in store for you, so stick around.
The Petrocaribe Development Fund has been helping to transform the Jamaican landscape for over 9 years, expanding our roadways, modernizing our airports, facilitating the creation of jobs and providing academic scholarships, reshaping communities and improving sanitation facilities. The Petrocaribe Development Fund, moving beyond energy security. To find out more about the fund, call 960-9110 or visit their website, petrocaribejm.org.
Social partnership is becoming a buzzword. It's recognized that this type of governance is capable of creating real economic change. Now, a few years ago, the Jamaican government signed its first social partnership agreement with other sectors of the society. Former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, has been successful at implementing social partnership in his country. Next, the final installment of a two-part interview with the Caribbean leader.
Welcome to this special JIS interview with former Barbadian Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Owen Arthur. We'll be looking at the issue of social partnership, the Barbadian experience of social partnership, the importance of groups coming together, pulling together, and how that relates to economic development. I'm Ian Boyne. You said in your address to the partnership at the Terra Nova Hotel, Right Honorable, that you commended the government for giving primacy to fiscal consolidation. You know that fiscal consolidation weighs heavily on the poor, that the adjustment period is hard, that there's a tendency to throw it off. What would be your word to us?
The process that generates growth, employment creation and debt poverty. The process is really twofold. Those things, growth, employment creation, poverty, come from the the expansion of existing businesses and the creation of new ones. And the expansion of existing businesses and the creation of new ones that can generate growth, employment, reduce poverty, has to be understood as coming from those two entities. Expand new businesses, create new ones. And the conditions for doing business is a critical consideration in many instances as to whether businesses will be expanded or whether new ones will be created. And that has to be told to the Jamaican public.
Yes.
That Jamaica has, like the rest of the Caribbean, has often failed to expand businesses or create new ones in search of higher growth, in search of poverty eradication, precisely because the conditions for doing business are wrong. The countries in the world that have grown the fastest, have the best employment records, and have reduced poverty as one undertaking, are those that have the best conditions for doing business in the world. And you know, in many respects, the Caribbean approach to development has been constrained by bureaucracy, constrained by artificial barriers. And why don't we remove them? And the ease of doing business component of your social partnership work is saying to Jamaica,
We're in the right direction.
that the time has come where we rely not just upon fiscal policy, monetary policy, and those things to create enterprise, but we will remove the constraints that in many instances don't require expenditure. So how long does it take to register a business?
Yes.
That can be an important cost in determining whether a business will start or not.
Yes.
And if in some countries you can go and establish a business quickly, And in another country, it takes you 6 months with a large amount of legal fees and other things. The country in which it can be quickly established will get the business rather than you. And that is the importance of what the government of Jamaica and the social partners are now trying to do.
Yes.
Bring Jamaica in line with other countries that don't have fiscal space. Because you can't stimulate the economy when you're consolidating the deficit.
Yes.
But are you prepared to find the other creative means by which enterprises can be established and existing ones be expanded?
I go back to the pain of fiscal
Consolidation.
Consolidation, and say to you as someone who had to deal with that when you were Prime Minister of Barbados, how do you motivate a people to invest emotional energy, to invest psychic energy, and to rally around a program that is costing them, that is hurting them? What will you say to the Jamaican people at this time?
But just me say that it is better that you don't get yourself in a position where you have to do fiscal consolidation. Because there's no easy, painless way
Out of it.
out of it.
So now that we are in it,
And that you have this
we can't kick the can down the road.
And that if you don't do it, then the chances are that you're going to have a worse problem to deal with
That's the key.
than if you deal with it and deal with it in a sensible way. What you have to do is that the government, even as it is inflicting pain, has to find creative ways by which it can apply some balm. There's always something that you can do to ease the pain of tough economic measures on those who you want to assist in the process. I'm sure that in devising the program, you have to exempt certain income classes from the full strictures of
And that's done.
expenditure cuts.
There's a social protection floor
Yes,
that is established.
If you have to, I'm sure that the Social Partnership of Jamaica will do everything to ensure that there's no Jamaican family that is going to be without a breadwinner, and do that as a deliberate strategy, that no matter how tough are the adjustments that the Minister of Finance has to make, it can't be so tough that he makes any family destitute. And that you measure the success of how you're managing the country in the way in which you prevent destitution.
Social protection.
Yes, and have new policies to do that. And there are many, many creative ways. And I'm saying that the fiscal consolidation program will have at its core these painful things, but that must be balanced.
At this point, as we talk about the challenge of growth, we're speaking to Barbados' longest-serving Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Owen Arthur. This is a special, GIS special interview with the Right Honorable Owen Arthur. We take a break.
The Mapping Jamaica's Diaspora Project, building a database on the human, financial, and technological resources of Jamaicans abroad, helping government to connect with Jamaicans in the diaspora for mutual development. Jamaicans living overseas are encouraged to sign up now. Spread the word to family and friends abroad. To take the survey, visit mapjadiaspora.iom.int. Information shared will be kept strictly confidential. Let's work together for our mutual growth and prosperity.
Welcome back to this GI special. We are speaking to former Barbadian Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Owen Arthur. We're looking at issues of social partnership, social dialogue. In short, the importance of our coming together, working together to achieve common goals. How important is the matter of adaptability? A country adapting to changed international circumstances, to overweening international circumstances. So change tactics to change environment. How important is that?
It is the key. And I keep telling Barbados that the problem in Barbados is not international recession, but that the environment within which Barbados's development is taking place has changed. Changed perhaps more than for any other small economy. And that the slowness to adapt, and sometimes the unwillingness to adapt, means that the countries can fail. There are other civilizations where, for whatever reason, the economy was not adapted or the society was not adapted to changing circumstances. And it became failed societies. An economy is just another species of social organization. And they must adapt. And in the case of the Caribbean, for example, the Caribbean is going through a phase where the Caribbean has always lived on the basis of its special relationship with the rest of the world, especially its main trading partners.
Trade blocks.
That special trade relationship that expressed itself in preferences has ended. There was a banana industry across the Eastern Caribbean on hillsides because of a special relationship. That is gone.
It's a WTO governed world now.
Yeah, and that is gone. And we have to find a way in the Caribbean of making that adaptation. Even the large countries now recognize that they too have to make adaptations.
Absolutely.
President Obama and others are now putting together the largest trading bloc ever. And
Trans-Pacific.
And as they're putting it together, they are doing it in a way that go beyond what any entity has ever done. There are disciplines that countries have never been able to apply within the WTO that they're applying now. The time is coming in the Caribbean where I spoke about the need for a new Caribbean Basin initiative of our own conception. The rest of the world is going ahead, adapting. The Caribbean is stuck in a time warp. The concept as to what constitutes the Caribbean economy must change. And the relationship between Caribbean entities in that Caribbean economy must change. Is the Caribbean thinking about what will be involved in the reintroduction of Cuba as a liberalized economy? There's an opportunity there because the rest of the Caribbean, in my view, has built a principal relationship with Cuba during its years of hardship. Time has come for us to bring the Caribbean together in the same way that Obama and others are bringing the developed world together. We have even greater reason to do so. And not only build a trade relationship across the Caribbean, but an economic partnership relationship. In much the same way that we in the Caribbean sought to build a new partnership agreement with Europe.
But there's a kind of fatigue with the whole regional movement to the Caribbean.
Yeah, but I'm saying, and the only way in which you're going to give it and remove that fatigue is if you do new things in new ways. You can't just go back to the old thing. So this opportunity now, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Bahamas has stayed out. Bahamas is now going to have to change too. It's seeking to join the WTO. And and be inspired by a new concept as to what Caribbean integration could mean. And I think that is what the advent of Cuba could mean for the Caribbean, because we had not been able to go as far as we could have gone with integrating Cuba in the Caribbean economy. But I believe that the Caribbean economy can only function if the largest countries like Jamaica, Suriname, Guyana, Cuba, DR, are the drivers of Caribbean integration.
Great to have had you on this GIS special interview with former Barbadian Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Owen Arthur, invited to Jamaica as a special guest for the second annual retreat of the Partnership of Jamaica, which is chaired by Jamaica's Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller. We thank you for your company on this GI special. Until next time, and Ian Bond.
Life is all about making decisions, choosing from a number of options to do a particular thing, which may result in a specific outcome.
It can be difficult, but there are 4 things you can do to help make that decision.
Stop. Check out what's happening and remind yourself to think before acting.
Think. Make sure you're aware of the choices, all the advantages and disadvantages. Then think about the consequences.
Act. Choose the best option and do something about it.
Review. Finally, review what you have done and determine if it was good or bad. That way, you'll be in a better position to make the next decision, whether big or simple.
This park, this whole park, represents freedom. Every pathway, every flower, every plant, every blade of grass, every bird gliding through the air, the freedom to excel and to exist. A simple symbol of the extraordinary transformation our ancestors would have undergone from enslaved to freed men and women. Here's their journey to full freedom.
The transition from slavery to freedom was a very difficult process. Slavery, a domination of the human mind, body, and spirit, fought to stay entrenched in the society where in the early 1800s, the whispers of freedom began floating over the hills of Jamaica.
Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit.
That freedom was to be finally granted came as no surprise.
By the end of the Almighty,
Freedom was cloaked in a system called apprenticeship, which required the ex-slaves to work for 4 to 6 years. Some dubbed it a period to smoothly move from slavery to freedom, to prepare the ex-slaves for full and equal citizenship. Others dubbed it the last rites of a dying institution, which have served them well, a fitting payment for lost investments.
redemption songs.
It was a transition that made the slaves neither bond nor free. The protests were many. Forceful persuasion, the order of the day.
Get up, stand up for your right.
Parishes such as St. Anne and St. Thomas in the Vale, now part of St. Catherine, smothered under the fury of opposition by the ex-slaves to this transitionary period.
Stand up for your right.
History professor Swithin Wilmot, in an article entitled Not Full Free, says a rather unusual form of freedom had been granted on the 1st of August 1834. Corrosive and oppressive experiences in the cane pieces and legalized torture sum up the working of the apprenticeship system in Jamaica. Lord Sligo, then governor of Jamaica, was convinced that the real test for the apprenticeship system would come on August 4, the first day when ex-slaves were expected to resume work on the plantations. His suspicions were confirmed. From the hills and valleys came cries which were the same as those echoed by the proprietor of the Roaring River plantation. That the protests were so great was very hard to ignore.
There's a spirit of complete rebellion. The people are extremely obstinate. All the people have solemnly sworn that they will not work any longer, as they're all free.
The 6-year apprenticeship period was shortened to 4 years. Full freedom came in 1838. The joy of being full free echoed over the hills and mountains as the ex-slaves raised their voices on August 1, 1838, to hail the end of a rule of tyranny. One said,
"We bless God, we bless the Queen, we bless the Governor, we bless the people of England for the joy we have. Let we remember that we've been on Sugar Estate from sunrise a morning till 8 o'clock at night. The rain falling, the sun shining. We was in it all."
Another,
"We have been made to stand up and see our wives flogged and we couldn't help them. The people of England didn't see us, but God see us. And God stir up them hearts and get us freedom. And now, we are all free people."
And yet another.
"You know truly that once there was a time we expected this good to come. We are not certain sure of it, but God has brought it to pass. I rejoice I am a slave no more, And you are a slave no more. Jamaica is no more a slave. Amen.
These fruits of freedom, sown in much hardship and pain, in blood, sweat and tears, have finally been reaped.
Yes, the heat is on. And as we continue to deal with the sweltering heat and dry conditions, parents, it's important to keep your kids hydrated.
Give them lots of water, lots of fluids if you can. Do some fun things. If you can either make some syrup with lime, lemonade, and freeze it. You can put popsicle sticks in there, and you have your children do it. And that can be a fun activity for them to do. And it's something that will keep them hydrated also.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Words of national hero Marcus Garvey. He's one of the men who took up the fight for the full liberation of the black man, which did not end with emancipation. Last Monday, on the anniversary of his birth, this great son of the soil was celebrated in a national ceremony. Coming up, why we can't afford to forget Daddy Marcus.
On August 17, 1887, the son of a Maroon was born, one who refused to accept the injustices he observed around him as he grew up.
Give us the teaching of.
At an early age, he began championing the cause of black redemption, leading the way for universal freedom of the black diaspora. At the age of 20, Marcus Mosiah Garvey took on a lifelong commitment.
I asked, where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country and ambassador, his army, his men of big affairs?
Garvey could not find the answers, and so he took on the tasks of helping blacks at home and abroad to create their own nation. Leading by example, he formed his own business and became involved in the political process in Jamaica. On July 15, 1914, he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities Imperial League.
No, tell me of a paradise in the sky, when that's a lie. And no, tell me.
The focus of the organization was to unite all the black peoples of the world into one great body to establish a country and government that are absolutely their own.
Open our eyes. You can't fool me.
Shortly after Garvey founded the UNIA, he left for the United States where several branches were established. And by 1920, the movement registered over 4 million members. On June 27, 1919, the economic arm of Garvey's liberation movement was incorporated, the Black Star Line. This enterprise was meant to create jobs and business opportunities for millions of people worldwide. The business did extremely well during the first year. But perhaps Marcus Garvey's most outstanding contribution in the quest for the universal emancipation of the black race was the Declaration of the Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. Adopted at the convention held during the month of August 1920 in New York. As a legal instrument, it ranked with the Magna Carta and the U.S. Constitution in that it affirmed and demanded redress for injustices heaped on a despised and rejected people by the entire world.
In this heretical war, don't tell me.
Marcus Garvey was not able to totally emancipate his people from the social, political, and economic bond in his lifetime, but he certainly planted the seed of black liberation across the globe, and the world has never been the same again.
Prophets tried to open our eyes.
On Monday, the St. Anne Parish Council also hosted a ceremony to commemorate the anniversary of the Black Liberator's birth. It was filled with joy, especially as the council named the recipient of this year's Marcus Garvey Scholarship.
Rally round the flag, rally round the red, gold, black and green.
Today serves as a memorable day in the parish of St. Anne, our nation, and the world by extension. A day in which we celebrate the immense contribution of an individual who has indeed assisted in the black movement across the world.
The theme today, liberate the minds of men through education, is very timely. You know that in the 19th century, in which Marcus Garvey was born, education, indeed, the black man and education was unheard of. Yes, unheard of. And in many fora, it was even considered a joke. The thought of the Negro, the thought of the black man and business was even more outrageous and was held up to outright ridicule. We have come a far way in this 21st century.
Garvey was what I call a polymath. A polymath is someone who has a wide range of skill sets. Master of the English language, public speaker, he's founder of the UNIA and ACL, the largest transnational black organization of the 20th century. Political organizer, local government representative, he sat on the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation between 1930 and 1934. Writer of verses, poetry, and plays, organizer of boxing tournaments and cultural activities at the Edoise Park in Slipe Road, newspaper and magazine publisher, entrepreneur, businessman.
To today's scholarship awardees, we encourage you to use the power of your own mind to make a positive difference. Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, knowledge is power. You must never stop learning. No one is ever too old to learn. One must therefore never stop reading.
In a nutshell, what we look at in order to choose the recipient or the awardee is that once the GSAT results are out, then we look for the 6 top grades of the students that will be attending Marcus Garvey. We also recognize that it is not just about grades, not just about academics, but an interview is also conducted because we want to know of the children's involvement in their communities, in school, and any other extracurricular activity. Here we have 6 excellent young men and women who will be attending the Marcus Garvey High School this year and who, because of their performances, were invited to apply for the Marcus Garvey Scholarship. This scholarship is offered for the 5 years of high school at the Marcus Garvey High School. It is a scholarship that is worth $50,000 each year for a total of $250,000 for the 5 years. The scorecards are in, the judges have done their bit, and I would like to announce this afternoon that the winner of the 2015 Marcus Garvey Scholarship for Excellence is none other than Darren Phillips.
I'm Theodore Henry, signing off for Jamaica Magazine. For more on Marcus Garvey and other stories, click on our webpage, jis.gov.jm. We're also on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, so log on and stay in the know. It was great being here at Emancipation Park. The next time you're here with the children, while you enjoy the amenities, be sure to educate them on the cultural significance of this city gem. Have a happy Sunday.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.